Hey y'all, welcome back to most of it. The weapons of the Imperium are numerous and varied. You have the old reliables like the chainsword and bolter, or you have less common ones like thunderhammers and plasma guns. But among the arsenals of mankind, few weapons stand out more than those of the Primarchs. The Primarchs are demigods of war, and thus they fight with weapons that are able to keep up with their skills and strength. But outside of just standard knowledge about their technology and capabilities, these master-crafted weapons also give us a deeper look into the personalities and motives of each Primarch. So today, that's what I'll be doing, going over each Primarch's weapon or weapons and seeing just what they can tell us about each one. So without further ado, let's get into this. All the other Primarch videos I've done in the past have been in numerical order, but you know what? Let's mix it up today and cover them in the order they were found in, starting with Alpharius. When Alpharius was found on Terra, it's safe to assume that he was trained in all forms of weaponry, but he didn't really have a signature weapon from what I can tell. There are accounts of him wielding a lot of different weapons. Of course, this is Alpharius we're talking about, so who knows if it's true or not. But his main weapons were eventually a plasma pistol named the Hydra Spite and the Pale Spear. Both are pretty interesting weapons overall. The Hydra Spite was a plasma pistol that seemingly lacked all of the drawbacks of standard Imperial plasma weaponry, like overheating, and this has led many to speculate that it's either a leftover of Dark Age of Technology tech or that's been modified with Xenos tech. The Pale Spear, on the other hand, was actually discovered by Omegon and brought back with him after he was discovered. The spear itself is believed to be a piece of leftover Necron tech from War in Heaven, and it's able to break down into multiple forms and kind of phase through reality to some degree. Whether the spear is actually Necron tech is currently unconfirmed, but it seems likely in my opinion. Alpharius' weapons are just as mysterious as he is, with none really knowing their origins, which I find very fitting for the Primarch. Also, the fact that he fought with a spear could be seen as a way to kind of keep people at arm's length, as that's just how the Alpha Legion operates. Next is Horus, and he used quite a few weapons. After his discovery, while he was fighting alongside the Emperor, he seemingly fought with a power sword and a storm bolter, with neither having anything special about them as far as I can tell. But after Olenor and his appointment as War Master, Horus seemingly received a few gifts from his brothers, with one being a golden blade made by Ferrus Manus. This is when he also got his iconic power maul, Worldbreaker, from the Emperor, and it seems like he would alternate between these two throughout the rest of the Crusade. But after he fell to Chaos, Horus would receive a gigantic power claw as a gift from the Dark Mechanicum, with it being dubbed the Talon of Horus. This and Worldbreaker would be his main weapons throughout the Heresy, and eventually the Talon would be taken and modified by Abaddon for his own use, with Worldbreaker somehow being broken by the new War Master. How Abaddon was able to break a freaking mace when Horus didn't is beyond me, but it's Abaddon, so what are you going to do? Horus's weapons were a direct reflection of his status throughout his life. His power sword and bolter were pretty standard but effective kit, and weren't really too flashy. But with his fall, he switched to two of the cruelest and most savage weapons in the setting, with Worldbreaker and his talons showing that his mind was no longer on noble endeavors, but rather subjugation and control. Next is Leman Russ. Throughout his time on Fenris growing up, Russ was mostly limited by the tech of his world. Fenris mostly fought with iron swords and axes, as that's pretty much all they could make, but with the coming of the Emperor, Russ began wielding a frost chain blade called Kraken Maw. The blade's teeth were forged from the teeth of a Fenrisian kraken, with legends stating that it could cleave the mountains of Fenris in half. I can't find anywhere if he was the one to make it or if he was gifted it, but I can't really see the Emperor hunting a kraken without Russ joining in, so I'm going to say that Russ was at least somewhat involved with its crafting. Unfortunately though, Kraken Maw would be broken by Angron during the Night of the Wolf, and so Russ would need a new blade. He would then take up the Frostblade Mjolnir, which is believed to date back to the Age of Strife. Similar to Kraken Maw, Mjolnir's blade was forged from the teeth of the Kraken Gormenjarl, which is one of the largest krakens in Fenrisian myth. Alongside Mjolnir, Russ also carried the Frost Axe Hellwinter, which as far as I can tell wasn't too special other than the fact that it was made by Russ, again using the teeth of a kraken. Russ definitely favored hand-to-hand warfare, but he also used a mini combi bolter pistol thing called Scornspitter. Originally, it was just a normal Imperial weapon until Vulkan modified it and eventually gave it to Russ as a gift because Vulkan's an awesome guy. These were Russ's main weapons throughout the Great Crusade, but he was also given a spear by the Emperor. Dubbed the Spear of Russ, but its real name being Gungnir, it was forged by the Emperor himself during the Age of Strife, and it contains a portion of his power with which it can illuminate or reveal something to those it stabs. Funny enough though, Russ hated the spear and never used it, and often purposefully forgot or misplaced it just so it would be lost, but it would always find its way back to him. Russ would even one time get drunk and try to throw it at the moon, but it still found its way back to him, and later he would just give it to Bjorn. Russ's weapons are all visceral and effective, with him favoring to be in the middle of the action instead of far away from it, effectively the opposite of Alpharius. And that's one reason he disliked the spear, as it felt cowardly to him, showing that the way he does a job matters to him more than just getting it done. Next is Ferrus Manus, and just like everything else about Ferrus, there's not much to talk about here. He had two weapons, and I'm going to talk about the funnier one first. I'm not sure if this is still canon, but Ferrus at one point wielded a huge power pipe wrench thing. There are no details that I could find about it other than this picture, but I just thought it was really funny. But Ferrus's most famous weapon was definitely Forgebreaker, the masterful thunder hammer forged for him by Fulgrim. Ferrus also forged the sword Fireblade and gifted it to his brother, but when Fulgrim tried to convince Ferrus to betray the Emperor, the blade was broken and Fulgrim took Forgebreaker back. Ferrus would reforge Fireblade and would wield it in the Battle of Isstvan V, where he would ultimately be killed by Fulgrim. Ferrus wielding a hammer is one of the most fitting Primarch weapons as it demonstrates his raw strength and will, but it also shows that he is versatile, as hammers are not only used to destroy, but also to create, especially on the forge, and we all know Ferrus was a master blacksmith. If only he had a better head on his shoulders. Next is Fulgrim, and we just touched on some of his weapons in Ferrus' section. He mostly fought with the sword Fireblade until he discovered the Lair Blade, which is a demonic blade of Slaanesh, and began using that instead. He used Forgebreaker for a little while on Isstvan before falling and beheading Ferrus with the Lair Blade, after which he gave the blade to Lucius and I believe kept wielding Fireblade. He also used a Volkite pistol called Firebrand, but didn't use it very often. After Ascension, it looks like he used a lot of weapons, but he seemingly always held on to Fireblade. Now here's something that I couldn't find a good answer to. Currently, Fulgrim wields a demonic chain whip thing and two swords called the Blades of the Phoenician. One of these is Fireblade, but the other mostly seem to be the Lair Blade. This doesn't make sense to me, as Fulgrim gave Lucius the Lair Blade and his new model's data sheet says he still uses it. So what's this other sword Fulgrim uses? Well, it could just be your standard demonic blade, but I believe that it's an Eldar Crone sword, most likely the one taken by Shalaxi Hellbane, or it could be Guilliman's Gladius and Candor that got left behind on his ship. But that's still just a theory. A game theory. Fulgrim's weapons are all very showy and flashy, but still undeniably well crafted, and that's exactly what Fulgrim is. Boastful and arrogant, but still extremely dangerous and effective. Next up is Vulkan, and he's had a lot of hammers. His first main weapon was the hammer Thunderhead, and not much is known about this one. But later he would forge the teleporter Dawnbringer, initially as a gift for Horus, because Vulkan just gives the coolest presents, but after meeting with him, Vulkan decided against giving it to him and held onto it. He would wield the teleporter on Isstvan V, where he would be captured by Konrad Curze, and after escaping, Vulkan would reveal that it was not only a teleporter, but also a hammer. After being killed and resurrected, Vulkan would then wield the hammer Urdracule, which he had forged previously under the Emperor's guidance. Urdracule was, I think it's safe to say, Vulkan's most powerful hammer, as it could spit fire and it even shattered one of Ferrus Manus' metal arms. I couldn't find anything on what happened to Urdracule, but later during the War of the Beast, Vulkan would wield the hammer Doomtremor, which could absorb and redirect energy from attacks. So yeah, Vulkan liked hammers a lot and was really good at making them, but he also used a plasma pistol called the Furnace's Heart. The pistol was a gift from Ferrus, but Vulkan didn't like it very much as he saw his brother's forging method as odd, as it lacked the traditional hammer and anvil stuff, and Vulkan was kinda superstitious. Vulkan's weapons demonstrate values similar to Ferrus's, with them embodying his strength and will, but as with Ferrus, hammers are also used to create works of art, which is what Vulkan truly desired to do throughout his whole life. Next is Rogal Dorn. Dorn's main weapons were a chainsword and bolter. The chainsword was named Storm's Teeth, and unlike most of his brothers, it was made for him on his homeworld before he was found by the Emperor. It was so well crafted that it was said that its teeth could shred anything, and it was so large that only a Primarch could wield it. His bolter was called the Voice of Terra, and it was a gift from the Mechanicum after his appointment as the Praetorian of Terra. There's also the Black Templar Sword of Dorn, which he supposedly wielded at some point, but I couldn't find any other data on it, so who knows. Storm's Teeth would be one of the few weapons to slay a Primarch, as Dorn would strike down Alpharius with it at the Battle of Pluto. I also believe at some point it was said that when Dorn found the Emperor's body aboard the Vengeful Spirit, that he broke Storm's teeth in grief, but I'm not sure if that's still canon or not. Dorn's weapons demonstrate his values of simple, efficient warfare, as the chainsword and bolter are the old reliables of the Imperium. You could also make an argument that shows Dorn's sentimentality, as he refused to use any other blade than that which was made for him on his homeworld of Inwit. Next is Roboute Guilliman. Guilliman's homeworld of Macragge has a very strong Roman theme to it, so throughout his early years you could safely assume that he used standard swords and shields and probably some spears or gladiuses. But his main weapon throughout the Great Crusade and the Heresy were a power gauntlet and sword. The power gauntlet is called the Hand of Dominion, and it was said that when it was wielded by the Primarch, it was so powerful that he could fell a Titan with it. His sword, the Gladius and Candor, from what I could tell, wasn't too special, other than the fact that it was a Primarch weapon of course, and it was ultimately lost when Guilliman fought Fulgrim, with it being left on the trader's ship. After Guilliman was resurrected, the Hand of Dominion was modified to now include a belt-fed bolt gun, and in place of the Gladius and Candor, Guilliman now wields the Emperor's sword. The blade was forged by the Emperor and contains a piece of his power. Wrapped in flame, it's one of 3 weapons in the setting that can give demons a true death, with them being unable to manifest after being killed with it, and it was even used to burn Nurgle's garden during the Plague Wars. Guilliman's weapons are demonstrations that more than the other Primarchs, he is a leader and a ruler, with the Hand of Dominion literally having the word Dominion in it, and the sword of the Master of Mankind passing to him. It's pretty obvious what's going on there. Next is Magnus the Red. Unlike the other Primarchs, Magnus mostly fought with psychic attacks, but he did still have some physical weaponry. He used a Khopesh called the Blade of Onnanurta, which was actually a force weapon. Force weapons are pretty uncommon in the setting, but they are essentially psychic attuned weapons that are more effective against demons and the like. So this, combined with Magnus's psychic might, made it an absolutely devastating weapon against the forces of the Warp and corrupted aliens. He also wielded a plasma gun called the Sci-Fire Serpenta, which is still theorized to be a psychic weapon, as it would always appear in Magnus's hand whenever he used it, so it may just have been a psychic attack in the shape of a plasma gun, but who knows. After Ascension, Magnus now wields the Blade of Magnus, which is a weapon that he can morph according to his will, although most of the time it's in the shape of a Khopesh. It can also cause whoever is struck with it to mutate into a Chaos Spawn, showing that its morphing ability is not just due to Magnus's power. Magnus's weapons are probably the most fitting of all the Primarch weapons. He's a powerful Psyker, so all of his weapons are powerful Psyker weapons. There's also the fact that the flesh change that once afflicted his sons has been utilized by him with his blade, showing the level of cruelty he has reached since his fall. Next up is Sanguinius, and he had a good handful of weapons, including but not limited to the Blade in Carmine and the Spear of Telesto. The Blade in Carmine is a power sword which, supposedly when wielded by one bearing the Angel's Gene Seed, has the ability to manipulate blood. If you want to know what that means, I can't tell you because I'm not really sure. The Spear of Telesto is a spear, obviously, which was forged by the Emperor, and it was the absolute bane of the traitor's existence during the heresy, as Sanguinius did a bunch of crazy stuff with it, like killing a Titan. It's said to be able to unleash a blast that vaporizes anyone that isn't a son of Sanguinius, so it's not the best weapon for joint operations. Also, during the Siege of Terra, he fought with the Moonsilver Blade, which was given to him by Rogal Dorn. These three weapons, I believe, are the ones Sanguinius fought Horus with the Moonsilver Blade being shattered during the duel. He also used a pistol called the Infernus, which I couldn't find too much about, but Sanguinius' weapons pretty much all had something to do with blood, as obviously that was his main shtick. But with the Spear of Telesto, one of its biggest abilities included not being able to harm a Blood Angel, demonstrating just how much Sanguinius loved his sons and wanted to protect them from danger, and to some degree, himself. Up next is Lionel Johnson, and his main weapons are pretty much all swords. His first one was the Lion Sword, which is a power sword that, much like the other Primarch weapons, is believed to have been forged by the Emperor. It was said to ignite into a burst of flame when it cut something, and it was the Lion's main weapon throughout the Great Crusade and the beginning of the heresy until it was broken by Guilliman. But it was eventually reforged and is believed to be the blade that Cypher carries around with him on his back. After that sword broke, the Lion began using what's called the Wolf Blade because he just loves weapons named after four-legged predators, apparently. It's a black chain sword which he found on Caliban, and it seemingly has some kind of otherworldly nature to it, as only the Lion can use it. He also wielded a plasma pistol called the Fusil Actinaeus, which, much like the Dark Angel's other weapons, seems to be a leftover piece of Dark Age of technology tech. These were the Lion's main weapons until he was put to sleep, but after waking up, he would find some new toys. His new sword is named Fealty, and it's a power sword he found in Mirror Caliban, and that's about all we know about it for now. He also wields the Emperor's shield, which he also found in Mirror Caliban, and with it being a tool of the Emperor, it's, I'd say, the most powerful piece of kit he's used so far, with it being able to reflect attacks even from really strong opponents like Demon Angron. And his last new weapon is Arma Luminous, which is a combi plasma bolt pistol that he found. The Lion's weapons are a direct reflection of his role within the Imperium. Before and during the heresy, he only ever used offensive weapons, as that's what he was, an offensive weapon used to destroy the Imperium's enemies. But after returning, he's taken up the Emperor's shield, and I think symbolically also taken up the role of the Imperium's defender, as he goes around Imperium Nihilus clearing out demons and protecting civilians. Next is Perturabo, and he's a really unique one. Unlike the other Primarchs, Purdy didn't really have a singular weapon. Sure, he used like a broadsword and thunderhammer at some point, but he mostly just kitted out his armor to be a weapon. His armor is called the Logos, and it's a heavily modified piece of cataphractite Terminator plate with a bunch of custom-built bolters and cannons that he could control through his mind uplinks. It was even equipped with a teleport beacon, which, come to think of it, why don't all the Primarch's armor have that in it? Sounds really useful. His armor was essentially a walking tank, even more so than the typical Terminator armor, and it's, I'd say, one of the coolest pieces of Primarch gear. But during the heresy, he would be gifted Ferrus' hammer Forgebreaker by Horus after Fulgrim took it, and Purdy would modify it slightly and rename it to Forgebreaker Desecrated, which is a little on the nose if you ask me. Perturabo's armor is right in line with his methods. He wants to be encased in a shell where he can see and control everything, and has everything he needs right there with him. It really goes to show just how practical the Lord of Iron was, with him not wasting time with nice colors or symbols, just straightforward, effective, reliable gear. Next up is Mortarion, and he has one of the most unique Primarch weapons of the bunch. Mortarion's weapon is a battle scythe called Silence. This thing is massive, with it being said that it is even taller than him. It's theorized that it belonged to Mortarion's adoptive father on Barbarous, and every cut of it is extremely poisonous, with it eating away flesh and metal with each swing. This is because it's actually a demon weapon, but whether it was one from the beginning or if it became one when Mortarion fell is unclear as far as I've read. Mortarion also uses an energy pistol called the Lantern, which was forged by a cult of a dragon god on a planet called Shenlong during the Age of Strife. Much like Silence, its attacks disintegrate those it hits and leaves them a bubbling mess on the floor. Mortarion's weapons are very similar to his nature. Both are weapons with otherworldly ties, but appear to be just standard weapons, much like how Mortarion is a psyker but tried to hide it throughout his whole life. They also work in very destructive, corrosive ways, similar to how Mortarion's jealousy and anger slowly ate away at him until he betrayed the Emperor. Next is Lorgar, and his main weapon was the Illuminarum, which was a power maul made for him by Ferrus Manus after the Word Bearers assisted the Iron Hands in a battle. Which is kind of funny, because Ferrus, like a lot of the Primarchs, didn't like Lorgar, but he still recognized the valiant efforts of the Word Bearers and he made them a gift. It was said to be as long as an Astartes and perfectly built for Lorgar's size and strength. He was also said to wield an Archaeotech pistol, which I couldn't find any other details about, so moving on. After Lorgar's ascension, he was seen wielding a rod topped with 3 metal skulls, suggesting that he either switched from the Illuminarum or modified it to be more chaosy. Lorgar has some of the least amount of weapons among the Primarchs, which I find fitting because he's not a warrior. He was an orator, and that was more concerned with recording and compiling than battle. Next is Jagatai Khan, and he found what he liked and stuck with it. His main weapon was the White Tiger Dao, which was a Tulwar-style blade that I couldn't really find anything too interesting about, other than the fact that the Khan was just really effective with it. His sidearm was a pistol called Storm's Voice, which was gifted to him by the Emperor, and was created during the Dark Age of technology. The Khan's weapons are just like him, honestly. We don't know too much about them, and that's the way it should be. Next up is Konrad Curze, and his main weapons were 2 lightning claws named Mercy and Forgiveness. These were cruel weapons that he used to flay his victims and wear their skins as trophies. He also used a lot of little throwing knives and daggers called Widowmakers, as he preferred them over guns, and I believe at one point he also used a chain glaive called Knight's Whisper before giving it to Sevatar to use. Curze's weapons are tools of terror, more so than any other Primarchs. To see his silhouette with his dual lightning claws would strike fear into anyone's heart, and it really just shows how much Curze valued intimidation over sheer brawn. Next is Angron, and similar to Jagatai, he found the style of weapon he liked and stuck with it for the most part. Both in the pits of Nucera and throughout the Great Crusade, he fought with the chain axe Widowmaker until it was broken by Leman Russ during the Night of the Wolf. Then, for a little, he used a chain axe called Brazen Tooth, but that was given to the Word Bearers as a sign of respect at the beginning of the heresy. After that, he began using twin chain axes called Gorechild and Gorefather, whose teeth were made from the teeth of Myca dragons. Gorefather was destroyed after Angron used it to dig out from under a fallen building, but it was eventually recovered and repaired and is held as a relic among the World Eaters. Gorechild suffered a similar fate as Gorefather, with Angron discarding both, but Karn would take Gorechild and repair it, with it becoming his main weapon pretty much ever since. Angron's sidearm was a plasma pistol called Spite Furnace, which I couldn't really find anything interesting about. But after his ascension, Angron would use the Black Blade, which was a sword forged by the Dark Mechanicum, with them sacrificing a bunch of slaves and demons during its crafting. It seemingly had the ability to grow with each soul it consumed, and it was Angron's main weapon during the Siege of Terra, and even wounded Sanguinius, although it was eventually shattered by the Grey Knights during the First War for Armageddon. With his latest appearance, though, Angron has picked up a few new toys, with one being a sword named Samniarius. It was made when Angron beat a Slaneshi demon of the same name to death with a metal bar, which trapped the demon's soul inside it and made it appear as a sword. His other new weapon is a chain axe called Spine Grinder, which was offered to him as a tribute by the Dark Mechanicum. But Angron got angry, if you can believe it, and slaughtered the Mechanicum's agents with it. Although he still uses the weapon, he seemingly hates it for some reason. Angron's weapons are just like him, savage and unsubtle tools of destruction, and they were treated just like he was, used until blunt and then discarded for something better. Next up is Corvus Corax. His weapons were called the Panoply of the Raven Lord, and they were a pair of lightning claws and a power whip. The claws were called the Raven's Talons and were forged by the Primarch to be unbreakable. The whip was called the Talianus and acted as a reminder of Corax's hatred of oppression and enslavement on Kievar, and it was even powerful enough to cut Terminator Plate in half. He also used a lot of guns, like a heavy bolter that he used like a rifle, and 2 Archaeotech pistols called Wrath and Justice. He also utilized a jump pack called the Corvidine Pinions, with wings that could slice through enemies and obstacles mid-flight. Corax used a lot of different weapons, which I think speaks to his childhood when, as a slave, he had to improvise weaponry throughout his guerrilla campaigns. Some of his weapons are also similar to Konrad Curze, which I think is just another indicator of how similar those 2 Primarchs were. But where Curze subjugated people through fear, Corax freed them, and that's shown off through his power whip and what it symbolizes. Last is Omegon, and his weapons were pretty much the same as Alpharius's, as he was the one to actually find the Pale Spear, so not much else to say about him other than that. And that's all of the Primarchs and all of their weapons as far as I can find. But with all that said, thanks for watching, y'all. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and comment down below what your favorite Primarch weapons are. Be sure to check out my community tab where I run polls and post memes from time to time. And with all that said, you have a great day, and I'll see y'all later.